Welcome, everyone, to the Indiana AAC Summit 2020 version, where we are doing virtual sessions with real solutions. We are excited that you are here tonight for this session that will be presented by Sammy Johnson and Connor Edwards, titled Secondary Literacy Instruction for Students with Complex Communication Needs. Next slide. My name is Beth Browning. I am a speech language pathologist and senior consultant for PRC covering the southern half of Indiana. And Beth, would you like to introduce yourself?
And I'm Beth Waite-Lefevre. I'm also a speech pathologist and a RESNA ATP. And I happen to work for PRC Saltillo as well. I'm the training and implementation specialist there. And Beth and I put the summit together when we first met back when I was a coordinator of AT services for a special ed co-op, and Beth was my consultant.
Yeah, gosh, that was a while ago, wasn't it? If you want to head to the next slide, I can tell a little bit about our history. So, gosh, back in the day, it was quite a few years ago now, we met at a Chili's restaurant, believe it or not. And I sat and told Beth about how in my job as a PRC consultant, I was traveling all over the state, meeting people who were doing really cool things with AAC, and then some people who are just really struggling to put one foot in front of the other. And I thought, man, wouldn't it be cool if we had a way to bring these people together so they could network and collaborate and learn from one another without having to reinvent the wheel all the time. And my original idea was, I know, let's get a bus. So we'll get a charter bus, we'll travel all over the state, we'll pick people up along the way, we'll take them to other sites, right? And Beth was like, no, that is not happening. So she very quickly shot that idea down and said, no, I think we can still do this though. We call this the Indiana AAC Summit. We can, do a conference every year where we bring everybody together. And so that's kind of how the idea came about. And since our very first session that we did in 2015, we are now in our 6th year. This year is unlike any other in many ways. And this is the first time we've offered our conference virtually. So we have grown quite a bit since 2015. Beth, is there anything else you want to add to that?
I think, we were kind of surprised in the beginning at the interest, but we've been so excited because it's grown every year. And what we really, wanted to do, the mission of the summit was to grow the services and the providers that were available to people in our state. And we've been fortunate to be able to do that. And many of the people who, come to the summit, come back the next year, bring more of their colleagues with them. They decide to present for us. So it's been a great thing to watch.
Sammy and Connor are a great example of that. Connor presented for us at the very first Indiana AAC Summit back in 2015. Connor, you were still a student then, right? Yeah. And yep. So, and then Sammy, she's been with us since 2017. So she came the 3rd year and has been with us ever since then. So we're really excited to feature them as our presenters tonight. Let's go to the next slide. So just a reminder, some of you have heard this before, some of you might be new with us tonight, which is why we go over this again. We do have a texting list that we will send a handful of texts each year if we have your number. So if you would like to be added to our text list, you just send us the word summit to the number 474747. We will not share your number with any other organization, and we only send you a couple texts a year, so we won't bug you. Next slide.
Okay, here's a little bit of housekeeping. First of all, if you would have trouble hearing or connecting to this, the first thing we would say would be check your audio source. There's a tab that says audio, and if you're using a headset and you're trying to get the sound through your headphones versus your computer, sometimes that needs to be changed. Log out of GoToWebinar, log back in, restart your computer. If those things don't fix your problem, we're going to ask that you call Log Me In because we can't troubleshoot with you while we're actually on the webinar. I also want to draw your attention to, there's a little orange arrow up to the top of that little panel, and that is a way you can minimize your window pane if it's kind of in your way. And there's also a feature called auto hide under options, and it lets you click it so that it's doesn't keep popping up all the time. So those are a couple of things you might want to look at. We have all of your lines muted right now, so we'll have you use the question box to interact with us. Let's go on to the next slide and take a look at that. So there's the question box, so you can type in your question. Beth and I will be looking at those, and we'll be hanging on to the questions about the content till the very end so that we can get through all the great stuff that our presenters have to share with us. And please know that we are recording this, and so probably by Monday we will have it up on our YouTube channel. If you've missed any of the 3 previous great webinars, they are on there now, so you can go back and catch up with ones you might not have been able to see, or you can refer those to your parents or colleagues that you want to share that information with. Also, the handouts for today, there are 2. There is a certificate of attendance, and then there is the PDF handout from the session presentation, and they are under the tab that says handouts, and so you can download those also.
Yeah, so you will receive a certificate of attendance that is included in your handouts with the GoToWebinar materials. And you can use that certificate to track any of your ASHA certification maintenance hours, or if you're not an SLP, whatever other professional development CEU hours you need to record.
There will be a short feedback survey when you log off of the class. So there's like maybe 10 questions. We hope that you will take that because we will share that with the presenters. And it also helps Beth and I, we look at that and kind of figure out, you know, this was a new venture for us this year. So is this something that we might want to offer again? Or, you know, is there an interest? What other topics are you interested in? So just take a few minutes if you would and do that for us when you leave the class.
Okay, a little disclaimer here. The Indiana AAC Summit is proud to sponsor these free webinars this year. Please note that all content has been developed by the presenters and may not reflect the opinions of the staff of the Indiana AAC Summit. And with that, I will introduce our presenters tonight. I've told you a little bit about Sammy Johnson and Connor Edwards, that they are alumni of the Indiana AAC Summit, and we're very excited to have them here tonight to talk about emergent and conventional literacy strategies with students who are in secondary education. So thank you both for being here, and I'll let you take it from there.
Great. So our presentation tonight, we're using a platform called Nearpod. We're just using it in a browser, and we wanted to use this because we wanted to share this resource because we have really benefited from it this year, using it for our students that are learning at home and at school. So if you want to join the Nearpod, we have some interactive features in it. I'm going to pull up our code here. So you can go to join.nearpod.com is the web address. So if you open your browser, you open a new tab, and you go to that website, it will prompt up a page where it's going to ask you to enter the code. And our code is right here. So if you'd like to interact with the presentation, we have a few polls, a few questions here and there. You're welcome to join there. All right, I'm going to close this, but up in my left corner on my screen, you can still see that code, 935TI, and you can join at any time during the presentation. So we'll go ahead and get started and let you guys keep logging on to the presentation, but I'll have my screen shared. So we are here to present our presentation called Secondary Literacy Instruction for our Students with Complex Communication. This is a picture of our team, socially distanced with all of our masks on. All right, so on our team, I am Sammy Johnson.
I'm Connor Edwards.
And I've been teaching since, this is my 4th year at Ben Davis, 4th?
Yes.
I think it's your 5th year, Connor.
Yep, 5.
Yeah. We also have, in this picture, we have Luke Hibbard, one of the other teachers, Keisha Bell, the other teacher, you saw her last week in a presentation, and Catherine Brown, our SLP, who you also saw last week in our presentation. And we are the teachers for our Thrive program, which is a life skills program, but we've renamed it to Thrive. You can see this here, what it stands for our team. All right, our program overview. So at Ben Davis, in our program, our Thrive program, we have 45 students. It's a cross-categorical class, 4 classrooms. This says 36 students hybrid, 10 in Thrive at Home. This changed today. We are bringing back our hybrid students 4 days a week. So that in-person number is gonna change drastically. So we will likely have those 36 students in 4 days a week, and then we will still have probably about 10 in Thrive at Home. In our program, we have 4 teachers and 13 paraprofessionals. This picture over here is a little old. I think it's from 2 years ago. We went on a trip to Costco. That's probably the only group picture we've ever taken, I think. It's hard to get us all in a group. Our rotation schedule that we follow between the 4 classrooms with the 4 of us teachers, we are aiming to meet those needs for the certificate of completion, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit and what that looks like for Indiana. They have transcripts that they are having completed. They're getting their credits just like their gen ed peers are for the certificate of completion. And they have transition portfolios they're working on. For that rotation schedule, we make sure we hit a lot of those academic experiences that they need for that certificate. So we teach science, math, English, social studies, health, vocational, and daily living. And then we also, obviously not right now because of COVID, have community-based instruction where we'll go out in the community and do different experiences for our students, kind of help them gain some of those skills for being out in the community. We have this year kind of turned it virtual and taken a video camera and recorded ourselves on different community outings, and made some fun videos with questions involved. The kids have enjoyed seeing their teachers on a video at home. It's been very fun. And also a disclaimer, we are receiving a stipend from the Indiana AAC Summit for presenting this evening. All right, so here's the first interactive part of this presentation. We want to know who's joined us for the presentation. So I'm going to hide some student names. So you can go ahead and answer and tell us who you are, what role you play, just to kind of give us a sense of who's here with us tonight.
And if you're not logged onto the Nearpod, this is just one of the features that you can kind of build into your presentations. Like Sammy said, we're doing a lot of virtual like field trip experiences. We do in-class activities at home or distance learning stuff for at-home students. So you can push out polls. You're going to see some like collaborate boards. And then you can also build in like audio recordings. So if you're thinking like, how is one of my students going to access this platform? There's a lot of really cool accommodations that you can kind of build in to the program that, you know, if our students are completely at home, they can click the play button in the recording and say like, oh, okay, it's just like Ms. Johnson or Mr. Edwards is teaching the lesson. So that's kind of nice too. So this is just one feature that they have. Looks like a lot of therapists.
Mm-hmm. Lots of therapists. Click share. I'll share that poll with you so you guys can kind of see. We are lots of therapists here representing something different. That's a big category that was filled. We have some teachers, paraprofessional aides, parents. All right.
Awesome. Good.
Good deal.
It's a different one. Yeah.
Spread.
Yeah. All right, so our learning objectives for this presentation, looking at elements of emergent and conventional literacy or conventional reading. Later on, you're going to have some time to kind of explore some of the resources that we have, and you're going to think about some thematic units with literacy activities that you could implement in your classrooms, or you could, you know, implement during therapy sessions and kind of share with your teachers or the professionals that you work with. List core vocabulary that could be used in each of those literacy activities, depending on what AAC systems you're using. And then as well as identifying examples of how to integrate technology through different software, different programs, and whether that be for students at home, in person, or kind of hybrid. I feel like everyone here is definitely learning about a lot more digital and technology resources. over these last 6 months. And so kind of thinking about how you can use those for this type of instruction. So our classroom makeup and rationale. Like Sammy said, we have a cross-categorical program of all of our students. So we have some students who at last year, were going out 4 days a week on part of day job internships with minimal support from the job coach, students with very high verbal skills, and then we also have students with more complex needs, whether that be medically, demonstrate challenging behaviors, use low-tech and high-tech AAC systems, some of those with speech-generating devices. And so for those rotations that Sammy was talking about, we wanted to try to balance, how can we make sure we're hitting everyone's needs appropriately? We're not just doing kind of a one-size-fits-all. We still want to hit those academics, but we want to make sure it's meaningful for everyone. So this kind of presentation is focusing on a group of 13 students. A majority of them are either falling under that kind of Indiana-like disability label of multiple disabilities. So a lot of students have more physical needs, as well as on the autism spectrum. So, like I said, that purpose, we wanted to provide individualized programming and supports. We wanted to make sure that students were receiving higher levels of retention, and whether that was through more tactile experiences for those students with maybe a sensory need, whether that be physically, or students with needing more like proprioceptive input, or maybe receiving like occupational therapy for some of our students on the autism spectrum. And so we wanted to ensure that they were getting really individualized supports that were different than our kind of traditional English classes. So, like I said, if you were to kind of follow our students on their academic day, everyone goes to an English class. We have a couple classrooms running where students might have more verbal skills and can access content using a computer more traditionally, participating in an activity, doing a paper pencil quiz activity with less visual supports. And so, like I said, the group that we are working with in this classroom identified as that students with multiple disabilities, as well as on the autism spectrum. A lot of them have complex medical, physical, and communication needs. And to look at kind of how we're supporting them, we are accepting means of communication. And we'll get into a little bit about our assessments that we did with our related and special service providers through a program called Every Move Counts, which is really awesome. And I would highly recommend looking into it if you haven't heard about it. Students who are using speech generating devices. A lot of our students these past couple of years have been getting them earlier and earlier, but when we first began working, some of our students were 16, 17, 18 years old and just getting AAC systems created and put into place. And so really supporting those students who have a lot of skills, but maybe haven't had as many years to practice it. And that's kind of, I feel like, if you're working at a secondary level, you're feeling that clock. You're saying, oh my gosh, we've only got 4 or 5 years to make these great leaps and to get them as ready as they can for after graduation. How can we get them communicating as best as possible? How can we get them as independent as possible? And also some of those students maybe have low tech supports. So how we wanted to do it was looking at, it says weekly. Currently, with our hybrid schedule, we have groups of students coming 2 days a week, a new group coming 2 days a week, and then they flip-flop. So that kind of looks monthly right now, but in general, a thematic unit and using age-appropriate text was a big thing we wanted to focus on, and we'll show some cool resources for you guys later. And then as well as experiential teaching. So how can you make that book, how can you make those experiences come alive to really teach good vocabulary instruction and get those points across on how, how that book can really reach them. So that was kind of our focus and how our classroom is composed.
All right, so we have weekly collaboration with some of our related and special services, like Connor had mentioned. So our speech language pathologist, she does words of the week, and she will come down with each student at the beginning of the week, and we usually pick 2 of them. This is a lot for the students, but it's also a lot for our paras, just to help emphasize we should be modeling on those devices and not always expecting a response back. But if the only words you say this week are go and stop, then Lord be it, it's going to be go and stop, but we want to hear it a million times. So she's put those words of the week in, and she usually collaborates with us on, hey, what book are you in? Hey, what unit are you on? Let's find something that works with that, so that we as the classroom teachers can be modeling those words of the week, as well as the staff being aware of where to find them. The students work with her on finding them at the beginning of the week, and we use them throughout, which is great. We have monthly staff training with our speech language pathologists, which has been really great. I know the staff have really appreciated it. We've heard a lot of great things, and they're learning a lot about AAC that they had no idea AAC was a thing even before Connor came to the building. So they're definitely learning a lot. The speech language pathologist works with our physical therapist to do the every move counts assessments for each student that we feel it's necessary to do. The every move counts, and we'll talk about that on, I believe, a later slide, or it's on the next slide, about what every move counts is. Our physical therapist provides some push-in supports. She co-teaches when she's not running around like crazy around the rest of the district with our resource teacher. She's stretched a little thin right now with COVID and trying to reach out to those kids. I'm sure you guys are all feeling that same struggle with reaching all of your kids at home and at school. But she helps with that every move counts assessments. Also, our occupational therapist helps provide our daily sensory circuits for our students. We have a wonderful sensory room, and it's nice and spaced out. We're very fortunate to have that close to our classrooms. She also provides some push-in supports for students that need them in the classroom, and sometimes does some co-teaching for our classes. And she helps provide some materials for access, some switches, some Big Mac switches, some of the what am I trying to think of? What am I trying to think of, Connor, that we plug those switches into? The switch interface.
Yeah, interface.
Yes, that's the word I was looking for. So she helps provide us with some of those materials to make it accessible for all of our students. So we are very fortunate to have a great relationship with our related and special services at Ben Davis, and we utilize that definitely to the fullest.
Yeah. Sammy, you had mentioned sensory circuits. I feel like we are that's what we call them, but it's kind of a weird thing if you're not familiar with what that phrase is. So basically, any of our students that are identified as needing either a calming sensory circuit, maybe they are coming in just really amped up, maybe something happened at home, the bus ride was stressful, coming back after 6 months of not being in school, just getting kind of regulated and being ready to learn for the day. She's put in these like 15-minute blocks where they go through different activities in the sensory room to get regulated, get ready for the day. Usually it's within like the first hour of our day. So after students eat breakfast, they know they have their set time in the sensory room. They'll go in with a staff, and it's things like they have a giant bubble tube that they'll sit with a weighted blanket on for a few minutes, walking around with weighted backpacks or like doing some of that heavy work. Some of our students are using the swing, the platform swing. Some students use the like cuddle, so getting some of that extra pressure. We have a desk bike that we have the resistance kind of high to. And then we have other students who maybe are needing to wake up and alerted. So doing some of those activities in a very bright room where they're jumping on the trampoline and just kind of waking up and getting ready for the day. So that's when Sammy said sensory circuits. That's what she's kind of set up for. And we have, she's put visuals around the sensory room. We have a binder for each student, or in the binder, like a slot for each student to kind of explain what it is that they're going through. So if a paraprofessional is new to them, or helping that day with a new student, they can go to the binder and say, oh, okay, here's your activities that you're going to do. Mm-hmm. So like we had said, that every move counts assessment, it is a sensory-based communication assessment, and it's administered to a lot of our students with more physical needs. And so it's looking at how can you accept multimodal responses. And so they go through all of these, almost ridiculous kind of experiments almost, where they're having students taste different things that are sweet, things that are sour, salty, and trying to elicit a response. Whether that be a look, whether that be a physical response, moving your arm or turning your head, and looking at some movement-based things. So putting students on the platform swing and doing some big physical movement, or doing little movements. And you're looking at what some of those preferences are. And so I know for one of my students, we found that he absolutely loved just ridiculous large movements. He has a lot of physical needs, takes a 2-person transfer to move with very carefully, and he just really likes being a reckless 20-year-old boy, which most young men are. So he is with that boat too. And looking at, what do those responses look like? What does a preference look like? What does a rejection look like? And so when we have that assessment data, we can kind of track what that looks like. And if we're trying out a new experience in a book unit or an experiential unit, then we can really know, we say, okay, well, that is not a preferred item, or that's not a preferred experience. He does not have that, and this is how we know it, because we saw it across all of these different trials. And so it's been very beneficial. I can't remember if it was the AAC summit. One of the Beths, you can probably help me. But there was a presentation on, they called them like communication notebooks, and it was for students with more medical needs. And for those that were graduating, they had like a photo album almost, and they said, oh, this is, all the things that Johnny likes, and here's how you know. And it was like, well, he loves the swing. These are the things that you can look for that says that he's enjoying something. And that was, input from family, input from the speech therapist, physical therapist, classroom teacher. And so when those students graduated, they would provide that kind of communication tool, that communication notebook, to a day program or a service provider. And so that's been really beneficial for us as we've kind of gotten some of these young men and women into our program. And a lot of them were done, I think one was done last year. It was someone that was missed. But the previous year, our PT and SLP had gone through this training. And so they kind of worked together from the middle school on, and they got all of these students went through this training to kind of get some preferences and see the.
All right, we've put the link in here.
Take you.
So sorry, Connor, were you talking?
So no, I was just saying you're going to take me to a website.
I am taking you to a website. If you're in the Nearpod, you click on the screen, it'll take you to the Every Move Counts page. It kind of gives you an overview and intro to it. And then if you're interested in more information, it's on that website. Also, you can just Google Every Move Counts, and that works. All right, we're going to talk about the certificate of completion here for Indiana. It is a course of study that kind of aligns these grade level standards while we're also trying to meet the individual goals and the transition needs for each student because they're IUP. And it was effective for our students who came into high school in the year of 2018, 2019. So our class of 2022 is when it started. So we are a few years into it now, and we think we've got it down, but it's definitely a work in progress, as it always is. Here's a sample course of study for the certificate of completion, and also you can click on that. I'll open it here on my end. This just shows the credits or the units that they have to get in order to graduate. And for this credit, it's not based on them mastering these skills. It's just all about exposure to the content. So they need 8 credits in English language arts, 4 in math, 4 in science, 4 in social studies, 2 PE credits, a health and wellness credit, 10 employability credits, and then they have 7 kind of flex credits with electives. And then, like I mentioned before, they've got that transition portfolio that they need to be filling out. So this is just kind of a sample. It looks similar to their gen ed peers needing those 40 credits for their diploma. So that's what Indiana is doing for our certificate of completion. So that's what I'm talking about when we mention it, if we mention it anymore in the future. Before I go on to the next part of that, do you know, I'm just curious on our poll here, do you know what the core content connectors are or alternate standards are and or where to find them? So if you're in the Nearpod, go ahead back to your browser and you can answer and let us know your answer to this. Awesome. So it looks like most of you know where to find these. Some people have never heard of them, which is great. And some of you don't really know where exactly to find them, but you have heard of them. So I'm going to show you where to find these. And the important thing first to realize is if your state is Common Core or not. Indiana here has not adopted the Common Core standard, so we're still on our Indiana academic standards here. So it looks a little different finding these if your state has adopted the Common Core or if they have not. To find your alternate standards, if you're on Common Core, you can search your state name and then Common Core and then Essential Elements. And then from here, just look for your state's Department of Ed website and you'll be able to access those alternate standards there. They call their alternate standards Essential Elements, so that's how you find it. It's pretty self-explanatory. Just type into Google. And if you're not on Common Core, like Indiana is not, you can search your state name and then alternate standards. So Indiana, I type in Indiana alternate standards. It would take me to Indiana's Department of Education website, and it sees the alternate standards broken down. Indiana, I think that they bunch theirs together by the topic. Some states, when I was looking a few of them up, do it by grade and what you would do in each grade. So they might look a little different state to state, but Indiana's is done by subject. So the essential elements, what I mean by alternate standards here is they took the state standards from this Common Core and they broke them down into the essential elements. So we don't need to meet this whole standard for our students in special ed. We just need to meet these essential elements or expose them to. So it's basically taking this big old standard and breaking it down into littler pieces. And then from there, kind of picking the most important. So that's what the Common Core, like we said, calls them the essential elements. And you can see it's far less wordy, a little simplified down. And then our content connectors and standards. So the Indiana Academic Standard is here on the left. And then they have the core content connectors. So the content connectors, you can see there's 2 connectors just for that first standard as well as the second one. So it breaks up that big wordy chunk into just 2, much easier to understand and much easier to kind of build your curriculum around for the core content connectors.
All right, so the reason we showed you those was to kind of really look at how we begin our unit creation or how we begin kind of our instructional piece. Is that, you know, our gen ed peers are looking to the standards and we're going to do that too, and we're able to do that through these core content connectors or alternative standards. So that's kind of our place that we can start. and that it is totally appropriate and doable, to find those and say, okay, like we can easily do a 10th and 11th grade standard. It's going to look different, but we can do that, and we can expose our students to the same amount of content. And hopefully we will show you kind of how we do that. So let's dive in. When we look at these literacy strategies, at the beginning you noticed one of the learning objectives was about emergent and conventional literacy skills. When you think emergent, not all of your students may know the letters of the alphabet. They may not be writing full words yet. They might need a lot more supports with symbol-supported text. Whereas a conventional learner in literacy is going to know all of their letters. They're going to be writing and reading a little more traditionally than kind of what we imagine. If you were here in September or August, where it was called the Thrive in Literacy with Caitlin Hardesty, our Thrive coach, and our assistive tech coordinator, they looked a lot at the research kind of behind these strategies. And it says it's rooted in Erickson, Copenhaver, and Musselwhite. And we're going to look at some of their blogs and their websites here coming up. And so I would definitely recommend, if you're wanting to learn a little bit more about the why and behind this, their presentation's awesome. They're doing some great work. And they're working a lot with primary grades. So we have kind of taken those strategies and we're looking at a secondary level. So yeah, and we're doing a lot of thematic units. So topic of instruction, and then emphasizing core vocabulary, that language that is 80% of what we say, all those little words, not very many nouns. If some of your students use LAMP Words for Life, it's that front 84 words. And that was kind of how we emphasize that. So Sammy's going to take us to a couple of these researchers and these practitioners' websites. So this is David Copenhaver. And so it is looking at beginning readers. He has some great blog posts. All of these people have put out some great research. They've published several great textbooks, and but with very practical applications that are looking at listening, speaking, reading, and writing, all of those domains of literacy that we imagine for our gen ed peers, but it's the same thing for our students with complex needs.
Do you want them to read this one, Connor, for a moment?
Yeah, so if you're able to get on there from our Nearpod, you can kind of explore some of the blog posts depending on different topics. There's going to be 2 after this too, so if you're not able to, you can look him up later. And what we found also is that some of these kind of practitioners of some of these strategies have also been really good training tools for our staff. And we'll actually show you another one that we found really helpful that we looked at during our undergrad. But just exposing them and giving them as much information as possible so they understand, oh, okay, this is why we're teaching it this way. This is why our students are learning this way.
All right. Whose is this? Dave's Literacy and Disability site. The link for this will be in the PDF handout, or we're going to make this Nearpod lesson live for 30 days afterwards, and you guys can go through it at your own pace. We'll have a chance for you guys to give us your emails at the end of this, and we'll send out a link, so you guys will have more of a chance to kind of read through these blogs at your own pace.
The next one here is called dynamic learning maps. And a lot of these are kind of how-to instructional videos that are really helpful. They break down a lot of these practices like predictable chart writing, kind of independent writing, alternative pencils, and they're about 30, 45-minute presentations that you can go through. And they have them in different subjects as well. There are some for literacy, there are some for math. So I would definitely encourage you to check these out as well, that they have a lot of really good information. I'm going to turn off my webcam, and hopefully that will stop me from cutting out so much. Sorry.
Let's see. I'll shut mine off, see if that helps. Oh, wow. Lots of essential elements talking here.
So it breaks it down by grade and content, what standards you're looking at. So if you look at Sammy's going to 9th and 10th grade. And that's that chart we looked at earlier where it is breaking down the grade level standard, looking at what the essential elements are, and kind of that unpacked, what are the big ideas? What are we trying to hit? So if you've not looked at this website or never heard of it, I would definitely encourage you to check it out because there's a lot of really good instructional tools here.
Yeah, especially for the Common Core, those essential elements. That's great that they've unpacked all those. All right.
And this last one is by Carolyn Musselwhite. It's called Literacy for All Instruction. And she was the keynote last year at Indiana AAC Summit. So if you were lucky to attend and see her speak, she has a lot of great work. Those top tabs are kind of a really good place to start. It looks at book access, writing access, and then it breaks down those two kind of big ideas of if your students are emergent literacy or if they're more of that conventional, and some strategies underneath. See those big kind of 4 ideas: that speaking, writing, listening, and reading. That's how we develop language.
I love this, that today we know that there is no student to anything to be able to read and write. That's awesome. All right. We good here?
Yeah, I think so. All right, so for those of you who are on the Nearpod, this is a collaborate board. So it's kind of like Padlet, where it's saying, here is a topic and all students can write or they can post pictures. You can also put in a feature for recording yourself. So if students aren't able to write something, they can put in a picture or they can send in a recording of their voice. Sammy's showing kind of how you can upload an image, just an easy Google search. And it comes up with tons of results. So for those of you who are on the Nearpod, feel free to what takeaways did you find? Which of those websites looked really interesting? Which ones do you maybe want to take a look at later? Do you use any of these resources? You can just put your ideas on there. You'll just type it in and click post, and everyone in the class or on the presentation is able to see what your peers have said. You can also like people's posts, a little heart in the corner. So it's kind of a cool way students can interact with each other. Yeah, absolutely. Lots of fans of Carolyn Musselwhite, absolutely. Yeah, a friend of mine showed me that there were other subjects on dynamic learning maps, and I had only used the literacy ones, so I didn't realize they had other ones. So I hear that. Love how geeky everyone can get about these new training tools. Dynamic learning maps, new fun. I feel that. I feel that. You find a new resource. Oh my gosh, this is great. Good, everyone.
Oh, yeah. That dynamic learning maps helps with those standards for sure, those Common Core standards.
Yes. Ooh, Tar Heel Reader. We'll get to that soon. Don't you worry. Yeah, absolutely. Give everyone 30 more seconds if anyone posts anything more, and we'll move on. Oh, yes, we tried out, one person's talking about Readtopia through, I think, Don Johnston. We did one of the free units, and definitely cool, kind of giving a lot of that thematic teaching, lots of different subjects woven in. So I think we can probably move on. All right, so we are going to break down looking at each of those 4 big ideas, that writing, reading, speaking, and listening. So in our classrooms, we kind of have this, we have 2 different types for our writing. We have a more structured style, and that is looking at predictive chart writing, as well as multiple purposes. We write for all kinds of different reasons as adults, and our students should have that as well. So we'll show a couple different ideas and kind of how we do that. And then we also want to hit unstructured writing. We want to give our students the chance to write on their own. And a lot of that is done through interest-based. I want to write about the things that I like, and I want to tell people about those things. And that could be on social media. And so we want to give our students that chance too. And even if some are interest-based, we also want to tie in our story. So that's just kind of another example and big ideas of how we're doing that. And we will show some picture examples in the next few slides. So I will give kind of my argument against alternative pencils in our experience. I definitely know there's some really cool things that I have seen from students using alternative pencils. So I know it's kind of going against like a research base, but I will say, like I said, a lot of our students have just been given access to robust AAC systems. And so a lot of our focus has been using full language, not letters, because like I said, it's a lot of that playing catch up, and we want to make sure that they have, you know, full use of that. And we've seen huge understanding and knowledge shown from our students with access to full systems and not just letters. I definitely know that there is great research to support, you know, students using alternative pencils. And kind of when we've looked at pros and cons of both, when we look at the age of some of our students and wanting to increase that access and increase exposure to modeled language input and just teaching them where these things are and how to talk about different topics, we have really seen that whole word has been really impactful. And we'll show you some samples of things where we've given students these prompts and they tell us about them and they write about them, and we're just blown away and we say, oh my gosh, I know I've never modeled that to you. So that's kind of our one kind of caveat to that alternative pencil piece. As far as independent writing, what we've done is we show our students a picture prompt, something with high interest preferences. Some of our students have favorite singers, favorite rappers. One of our students loves video games. Showing them videos related to a setting, characters in the story. We read Lord of the Flies, which we're going to get into that unit a little bit later. And so we showed all these awesome videos of jungle animals and virtual reality experiences in Nearpod. And we would just have this basic prompt of, what do you see? Tell me about that. And no matter what a student says, we would accept it and we would write it down. And then you can go back and show them, oh, this is what you wrote. You said all of these different things, and model it. So as far as kind of how we did it, Sammy's gonna turn the page and show you an example of one of these pages that we showed. And this, I wanted to show kind of the very raw, quick snapshot of how we did it, because data is always a nightmare, and especially, you know, students with AAC, you want to capture everything they say, and it's so hard to. So a really just simple way we did this was we had a book of pictures. In this case, the student was talking about Mario Kart, and he had a whole set of 5 or 6 pages with different pictures. And the paraprofessional who was working across from him just wrote down everything that he said about that picture. And that was just a quick way of saying, okay, here's how we're going to capture this writing. This was a student who had 4 symbols when he came to us from a different placement in his AAC kind of low-tech system. He is now on full access to LAMP. I guarantee you I have never modeled tunnel or skateboard to him. I don't even know where those words are, frankly. But I mean, with a simple prompt of, we showed him this picture, he was immediately interested because it was something he wanted to write about, and this is what he came up with. And that's pretty incredible. And we say, oh my gosh, yeah, all of those things are in Mario Kart. And so he was motivated to write about that topic, and that was where we really capitalized on that interest, and we saw this kid has so much in there and all of these things that he wanted to tell us. On the page, this might be the same student. We had just finished reading Beowulf, and so, you know, that last picture was interest-based. This is more of our story-based. So we had just read a part about a dragon. And we told that. And the para just wrote every single thing down that he said. And then we kind of highlighted some of the things that were like, oh, wow, yeah, it does look like fireworks from the dragon. He does look like he feels mad, and kind of going over those words. And then the same thing, there were some knights in the story, and we showed him a picture of this. He said, foggy, feel mad, group. Maybe they're listening or hearing, they're alive. So that's kind of that story-based versus interest-based, and how we give students the opportunity to talk about our story. Next, you may have seen this on one or several of the websites, but predictable chart writing. And this is more for your emergent learners. So this is a really good visual. I think I stole it from Beth and Caitlin, actually, because they did a really good job of how to do it. And so it's a 5-day process, and every day you do a different activity with a simple phrase. And this is perfect for students who are just getting exposed to their devices because they're getting that repeated, okay, the phrase is I want. They're given some options for what they want to say, and they write the chart in the first day. The next day, they're gonna reread it. You can clap it, you can rap it, you can chant it. Day 3, you're gonna cut those sentences up and you're gonna move them around, put them out of order, try to put them back together. Day 4, I always like, because I think it's fun, you can tape the words on students' bodies. They can hold them, they can use single message switches, and they try to get in order. They stand up and move around, which is just more engaging. And then day 5, they make a book, and that's going to be another piece of literature in your classroom library. We're also going to look at some of the distance modifications a little bit later. So if you're like, oh my gosh, we can't be descendants, they can't get close to each other. So we have some kind of solutions that we've looked through in times of COVID. The next kind of purpose, like I said, we write for different purposes. You know, we're not always just writing about things that we, you know, have to say at work or writing emails, writing text messages. You might be writing a recipe. So taking a predictive chart and using the phrase I need, then we made a recipe book for how to make pesto. We have an awesome outdoor garden that we use. So we took a day where we were becoming the sentence outside, and then we all went and got all the stuff out of the garden, harvested it, and then you can see the young man very excited to use the switch to turn our blender on, and everyone got to try some pesto. And so that's just a very, you know, different, unique experience that our students get to have that might not have it typically. And also, you know, you're writing for another purpose. We write down recipes all the time, and this shows our students that you can write for different things. Our next kind of big domain is reading. So how can we get access to this? Part of reading is vocabulary instruction. So some of the ways that we have looked at this, we call it chord out. And you'll see what we mean kind of in our examples. But if anyone has used the Frayer model to teach vocabulary, that's a kind of modified way that we used it. Explicit instruction with hands-on items. Graphic organizers, we have a few examples. And video and picture examples. We do repeated readings. So, you know, we're not reading one part of the text one time. You're going to read it, and you could say maybe the first time, well, we're going to find out, you know, we're going to try to find the vocabulary in this part of the book. Or this next part, we're going to read it and find all the characters. So we're giving them a repeated exposure, so they're really retaining the content. With that, you're using modified materials, modified text. Some of them we have made in that chord out format, or using outside content. And there's some cool websites that we're going to show you with a lot of really good age-appropriate text. And then next, we're using a variety of texts. We're not just reading one type. We're reading fiction, we're reading nonfiction, we're reading recipes. Like I said, I don't like reading the same thing every day, and neither do our students. So it's good to expose them to different types of things.
All right, some of the graphic organizers that are used, we've linked them here. We just use the Reading A to Z website, pretty easy to find. You can find these almost anywhere. This is kind of a vocabulary sense wheel, so you could put a vocabulary word in from your book that you're reading or the symbol for it, and then we provide those symbol options. So what does it smell like? What does it feel like? What does it look like? What does it taste like? Kind of takes them back. We use the EET model actually for our journals every day. So they have experience with just looking at a word for more than just the word, so describing it in a bunch of different ways, and this expands on that with story-specific vocabulary in our novel, in our units. Another graphic organizer that's used is this vocabulary flower one, and again, having things about the word, symbols that might make them think of the word. We provide some of those options or take some responses from their AAC devices if they do give us some of those words that link to it. And another graphic organizer that we use is this Y chart. So it's kind of similar to that first one, but what does it look like? What does it sound like? And what does it feel like? And this is a great time to bring in some of those hands-on materials if you do have them for some of the vocab words in the story, for them to be able to touch it and hold it and hear it dropped on the ground, hear it tapped up against the wall. Just to see it in person kind of helps give that multisensory experience while they are working on their vocabulary words.
So kind of wanted to show individually what the standards alignment look like. So here we have a 9th grade vocabulary standard talking about acquiring and using academic and content-specific words and phrases at a college and career readiness level. And then next to it is that content connector. It's broken down. It says you're going to use grade appropriate academic domain specific words and phrases within writing. So you're able to look at it and easily apply it and say, okay, yes, like we have an age appropriate book, and yes, the text might be modified, but it's appropriate for the students and this vocabulary word they don't know, so it's appropriate for this domain. So I just wanted to kind of show that side-by-side picture, and we're going to look at some more examples of that a little bit later on.
All right, so the Freyer model that Connor had mentioned earlier, this is one of our examples for using it for, I think, boat was a vocab word from Call of the Wild, if I'm not mistaken. So you put the vocab word in the middle, you use that definition or answer that what question, which is easy to model in our LAMP core boards that we use. So we might say what, and then model those answer options, and they can pick with those symbols or with their devices. And then those characteristics, or it's broken down into look. What does it do? What does it look like? Again, those are great core words to model. And then we always talk about examples and non-examples. So a boat, another example of a floating vehicle or vessel would be a kayak, but a car does not float like a boat does. So that's the Freyer model. This is, again, like we said, for our students in that multiple disabilities classroom, that autism classroom, being able to express more on a vocab word than just matching it to a picture or matching it to a word, kind of expanding that out with the Freyer model. And here's another example from a student in class, was a different graphic organizer that was used, and it was talked about same and different. So it was comparing, it looks like a cardinal to the owl you can see down at the bottom. And these symbols were prepared before time using Symbol Sticks is the program that we use. I know some people use Lesson Picks, but Symbol Sticks, and they were able to pick, okay, was that the same or different? So that week the words of the week might have been same and different, which actually works out great for this lesson. But again, showing that those graphic organizers aren't just for those students that can write those words, but for those students with other means of communication to use.
All right, so our way of, our kind of third domain is speaking. So the way that we do that, some examples, call it author's chair. So it's a way to promote authorship and a way to show off what your students have been working on and for them to be proud. A lot of our students don't get the chance to present things in front of their peers and show off, hey, you know, I've been working on this all week and I'm really proud of it, so I'm going to read it to you. Could be pre-recorded things that you have set up or peers have set up, using speech generating devices and verbal speech to read it, and then always just honoring those snugs, that spontaneous novel utterance generation. Something that we've started this year, maybe right at the end of last year, we've called it our Snugs of the Month. So this is a poster in my classroom where we just kind of recognize a student for having an awesome month using their device, using their communication method, and saying, hey, like, we print off, you know, a picture and have it posted in the classroom, and then some examples of their work and why they should be really proud. And last month when we did it, we showed it off at the front of the room. We said, oh my gosh, this month he is our snug of the month. And, he was super excited. He got a chance to have all of his classmates, be proud of him and congratulate him for doing that. It's a great opportunity to send home, progress to families. Some of our students might not get awards or might not be used to getting awards, and this is just a cool way to recognize that ability in the classroom and to show their families like, this is, you should be proud. Your student did an awesome job at this. So our next slide is showing just some different ways that you can do author's chair. So a lot of times we'll use it at the end of our predictive chart writing. So after that book has been produced, on the right, you see a young man sitting in his Riften chair with our physical therapist, and she was helping him activate the switch that had the phrase, I want or I like, and that was his way of reading to the class. On the left, you see a student maybe needing a little more modeling support from a paraprofessional, so he has his device there. And then at the bottom was just last month, actually, where a student's more independent, and I believe he uses LAMP. And so I was over at the computer, we had pulled up his book, and he was reading it to the class. So that's just kind of in your class. You can find a really comfy chair, whatever, make a really big deal out of it. So those are just some examples. So let's look kind of at the nitty-gritty of how do we break down this process for creating a unit. So first, we will choose our text. Looking at that age-appropriate text, like I said, we read Lord of the Flies. Last month, we were in a unit with a young adult book called Hoot. Same as said, we've read Call of the Wild. Last year, a group read Frankenstein. And we'll show some cool websites for finding those texts. Next, you're going to ID your standards and your content connectors. Then you're going to create opportunities for all literacy domains to be represented. And then the last thing we do is finding options for multisensory experiences. How can we make this text come alive? How can we explicitly teach concepts that our students might not have had?
All right, so finding some of the age-appropriate text, we wanted to share some of the resources that we use. I believe, yeah, I've got them linked on the following slides. So we'll kind of flip through some of those that we use on the next 3 slides, but the stuff that's not available online, we have our, like Connor said, our cord out, our homemade books that we make on Google Slides or PowerPoint, and we'll show you some examples of those and kind of what it looks like to be cord out. And we connect with the Gen Ed teachers for English classes to kind of find out what they're reading so that our students, so we can try to find an adapted text for it, or like we said, make one on our own on Google Slides. And then to create those, so if we found out they were reading 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, we could use SparkNotes to help make that summary on those Google Slides if it wasn't available on some of these other websites. So let's look at a few of those websites here. The first one is the College of New Jersey, has this center that has a ton of fiction books. So let's see, Where the Red Fern Grows. If I click on this, it'll take you, you can download it, and I believe they're almost all PowerPoints. It's probably not going to load quick enough, but they have a ton of these fiction books, and they're all age appropriate for our students here at the high school level. Most of them are. So that's why we like this, because it does have some things that their peers would be reading. Obviously not The Vanishing Pumpkin here at the high school, but this is a very interesting resource to kind of dig through and look through some of their fiction options. They're all through PowerPoint, most of them are. Some of them are PDFs, and they have a lot of visuals with them and symbol supports within the text. And obviously it downloads as a PowerPoint, so you can edit it more beyond what they've already created. Another site that we use this probably a little more in our non-MD or our non-resource English class, is the Paul V. Sherlock Center on Disabilities at Rhode Island College. They have 424 adapted books here. So let's see, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. We'll click download. These all come, most of them come as a PDF, and they have adapted each of these. So it's got part 1, chapter 1. It does these symbols provided with the text. I know some of them are a little more simplified than these ones are. So Connor uses some of those more in his resource. He actually uses a lot more of what is the homemade cord out stuff. This gets used in our other English class, but this is a great resource. It's a great place to start, even if you need to simplify it down more than this. But we totally enjoy the symbol supports for it and just how it's been simplified down. And I mean, they're pretty lengthy. They aren't quick reads, so it's great for a unit, for a novel. And another website is the CAS UDL Book Builder. Over here, they have books already made that you can read. So they've got the public library books here. You can click here to read it. And it will open in a new screen. It has text help on the side so it can read it out loud. It's got pictures of each page as it's reading it. So this is a great resource to find some of those already made books. And then over here, you can actually create and edit your own books, become an author, or use that for some of your students to create their own books through this CAST website. All right, here's one of these examples of our homemade cord out version of books. So this is the Lord of the Flies. And we have on each slide cord out all of our core words on the front page. Like Connor said, we use LAMP across for our modeling across classrooms. Obviously, not all of our students are on LAMP. We have some students on other programs as well. LAMP is just more common in our classroom. So we use these all live is the core words that we would model up on the front board. Again, go. These help us remember what to model up front, but it also helps a lot of our staff. It kind of gives that natural cue to, oh, why is this word in all caps? Oh, wait a second, I should model this on their device right here. And it's also been great for our students that are at home with their parents. We actually have a YouTube channel, and one of our videos kind of explains like, hey, if you see these words in all caps, this is what they mean, this is how they can be used. So that's giving a great opportunity for our students at home with devices and other means of communication to kind of emphasize those core words and not necessarily expecting the student to find them every time, but at least the parent or the staff is modeling them on each page. So this is our Lord of the Flies adapted version, all homemade using SparkNotes.
Definitely using SparkNotes. I have not read Lord of the Flies or some of these books. Yeah, I have not read since high school English, so don't feel like you have to go out and read all of these classics. You can totally, your students won't know. You can read it with them the first time. Okay, so supplementing your instruction with multisensory experiences. The big thing that we found is don't overthink it. Don't go out and buy a bunch of new stuff. Use items, things in class. It aids in supporting vocab instruction. It students with a unique sensory need who may have had that lack of experience. Some of our students maybe have never been to the beach. So you'll see here in a little bit, when we look at Lord of the Flies, we got buckets of sand from the Dollar Tree. It was cheap, it was easy. We threw it all in a bucket, they took off their shoes and socks and felt it. So it doesn't have to be crazy new stuff that you're reinventing the wheel. You can use stuff you have. On this next slide, it kind of breaks down, what is the standard that we're looking at, and what is the modification. So for theme, the standard we're looking at is analyze how the theme and ideas emerge. The modification, so we were reading The Hobbit this time a year or two ago. The theme was good and evil. So our core vocab was good and bad. Those were great things that we could model all the time. These were the people who were good, these are the people who were bad. For written expression, writing routinely over a different, range of tasks and purposes. So we would use sentence stems with visual options, predictive chart writing, things like that. The standard about character identification, looking at picture sort, same and different character traits, another great way to model that language. And the next comprehension, comprehend a variety of grade level appropriate literature. The Hobbit is definitely grade appropriate. And our questions that we would make would be in core, and we would have visual options for students to choose answers. So I think we had a sub come in to our classroom a week or two ago, and I said, oh, like next week you all have your final that we're taking over Hoot. And she looked at me and she said, they take a final? And I said, yes, absolutely. We're still able to provide that opportunity and that, that assessment that we want to see what. So definitely a great kind of quick way to like break it down and show you guys how we approach this. As far as the multisensory and tactile supports, like I said, don't reinvent the wheel. We would watch a clip of a dragon breathing fire from the movie, and then we got on the platform swing. So it was like Dragon's Flight. This might be what it would feel like. And we turned the blow dryer on the hot setting. This is what maybe the fire would feel like. It would feel hot. So some of you might have a platform swing in your classroom or in your sensory room. And we had one of our staff had a blow dryer, and we said, hey, would you mind bringing that in tomorrow? It was something real easy, real quick, but it gave that experience. Our next kind of overview looks at that Lord of the Flies we just got done doing. So that theme is personal conflict and decision making. Same thing, we'd use sentence stems with visual options, predictive chart writing. For our character ID, we would look at good and bad actions. I think we called an activity like ethics. And some of the characters had trouble making decisions, or they needed help, if they were upset. Same thing for comprehension, questions made in core with visual options. That multisensory component that we had, right after we read that they crashed onto the island, we kind of made it like a beach theme. So we had water in spray bottles for the surf. We would spray it on student hands, or if they wanted, they got to spray us. They feel like the surf in their face or on their hands. Got incense. Might smell like this. We used sand and shells in a bag. Students got to feel what that would feel like on their feet, with their hands. Put conch shell up to your ear, see if you can hear anything. So those were all really quick things that, like I said, a lot of the stuff, if I bought it, it was from the Dollar Tree. So it cost me $5 to do that. We had the spray bottles in the classroom, very quick, very easy. Didn't have to make anything crazy new. Our last unit that we're currently in actually is for the book Hoot, and the theme is helping the environment. Some of those same written expression and comprehension strategies that we're using. And for our tactile supports, so we've worked in the outdoor garden. How can you help the environment? You can grow things. So we have a student who got the chance to go out and water it. And then this was from a previous year, but we're about to do it next week. We are going to dissect owl pellets. So we have watched tons of videos of owls vomiting them up, making predictions and making guesses about what things are going to be inside. And then we've got some charts, and we're going to double check their predictions to see, what is in there. So next, it kind of gives a whole unit at a glance. I put this for a month, but you can obviously adapt it to however you need. And honestly, when I'm looking at this, it looks like a unit that any English teacher would make. You're doing at the beginning of the week, at the very start of your book, you're doing an introduction, you're making predictions, watching videos, looking at pictures, free writing, introducing characters as we go on. You notice I try to put some tactile experiences in each week or every couple weeks, and those can always be revisited whenever students need it, or if they want, they're like, oh, what did it feel like? I want to feel that or look at it again. Playing some vocab games, Fly Swatter, Jeopardy, looking at nonfiction text, looking at Tar Heel Reader epic books. We'll take a look at those. And you can look at these on your own a little bit later. I think we're a little crunched for time, so we'll keep moving.
All right, some of our distance and digital learning modifications that we've used that we think would be helpful for you. First is Loom. We actually use this Loom extension up in Google Chrome. You can just search Loom for Chrome. When you click on any website, like I think you can see, it pops up down in the corner. It would pop up your webcam. If you wanted it to, you can turn that completely off and hide your webcam. You can make yourself bigger. You can make yourself smaller. But it helps you screen record on any website. We use that constantly for videos at home for our YouTube channel. For those tactile sensory experiences, we usually individually bag all those for our students right now. Obviously, we don't want them all reaching in the same bucket, feeling the sand and the shells, so they each have their own bags. We use Jamboard, the Jamboard Google extension for writing for those predictive charts. Using the outdoors right now, it's gorgeous weather, using those socially distanced activities like that learning garden that we have. I know Connor has used chalk out on the sidewalk to say I like, and like he said, taping a word to each kid and they can move around to fill those spaces to finish those sentences. We also use some online reading platforms. We use Epic Books. They have great read aloud stuff, Tar Heel Reader and the Tar Heel Shared Reader.
So we saw the 5-day chart of predictive chart writing. So this is predictive chart writing at a distance. So normally you might make it as a class. So for this, the first day, everyone has an individual chart that they get. Those pictures aren't in order, but the picture's on the right. Then you're going to move your chart work to Jamboard. So each student has an individual page. You can see it on the computer screen there. It just looks like these little Post-its. And they get to reread the chart and put it on their Post-it page. Read a classmate's Jamboard page is day 3. Day 4, be the sentence. We can't stand right next to each other. So like Sammy said, it's outside with chalk on the sidewalk. There's a whole block of sidewalk in between every student, so they're definitely distanced. And then last, instead of making a paper pencil book, they make a digital book on Google Slides and present it.
So that Loom extension we were talking about, like I said, it's a Google extension. It's free with any Google account. It shows your face with the screen recorder, which is great because the students can see the screen, but also your face. We use this a lot during the spring quarantine that we had. It's engaging to students. They love seeing their teachers down in the corner, and the families, it helps them navigate a digital space so we can make how-to videos for how to log on or how to make those distance things if you're at home. And we use it for most of our YouTube videos, like I mentioned. Here's I'll play 20 seconds of this. This is a Loom video that Connor made to show a how-to for parents at home to how to make students make their Jamboard predictive charts.
So we have been doing our predictive chart writing, and I'm going to show you how to go a step further and move out of our Jamboard and make it into a digital book. Now, if your student is here part of the week, they do this already. So really this video is for just people at home. And
so we obviously don't have time to show all that, but you can see Connor down in the corner. You can hear him really clearly, and it shows that full screen, which is a great resource for our students at home.
So as far as some extra digital platforms, these can be used in school, they can be used at home. They're interest-based and motivating because they have huge libraries. And there's also a lot of read-aloud options, which is really accessible for all our students. And all of these are free also, which is even better. So the first one is Epic Books. It has so many, some are read-aloud, some are a little bit longer. There are like comic books. One of my students has been reading all about Power Rangers and he keeps showing me, and I said, wow, I didn't even know they had comic books. So they might stumble across something that we didn't even know. Number 2, Reading Rockets. They have some really cool downloadable books. If you get the free trial for a month and download as many as you can, that's one way to do it. You can do it if you'd like. 3, Tar Heel Reader, I know someone mentioned that on our Collaborate board earlier. There's a lot of great options for students to write their own books too. Tar Heel Shared Reader is a great way to kind of promote that shared reading experience and good model language input for families and staff. Number 5, free reading program. They have a little more, some of those conventional strategies looking at phonemic awareness, phonics, and so if your students are working on those skills, that's a great one too. You can make a profile, see their progress. Reading A to Z is another one that if you'd like to get a free profile and download everything, I can't stop you. And number 7, ReadWorks is another really great website that has a lot of cool different leveled books that you could read. And then some additional sports and our contact info. If you search MAST modules, M-A-S-T, and then they are kind of instructional tools that really we have used a lot with our staff this year and kind of making some professional development opportunities for them. And then I know Sammy and I use this in our undergrad program. So we're familiar with it, but it's a great teaching tool, or for yourself or your staff. And there's a tab called Students with Significant Intellectual Disabilities, and there's a bunch of different topics on prompting hierarchies, and then they have some great literacy ones, adapting books, creating writing opportunities, things like that. You can find us on our YouTube channel. Just search BDHS Thrive. You'll see, I think Sammy's webcam photo that she showed is what you'll see. And there you'll find some different, you'll see that EET journal and some extra how-tos. If you have any questions, feel free to email us at bdhsthrive@gmail.com. And on the next slide, I think Sammy's gonna show you that you can share your email with us if you would like this Nearpod link.
Yeah, so we have the opportunity with Nearpod, which is another great feature of this, that we can send out student-paced versions. So our students that are at home, that aren't participating all the time in a live stream, have the ability to do this on their own time. So they will get a link that's live for 30 days. You can access it through that same website we said before, join.nearpod.com. And if you guys put your emails in here, while I think the best are going to come on and help us answer some questions, we'll take these and we will send you guys an email sometime this weekend with the code. And if your 30 days expires, then we'll get you a new 30 days. Just email us back and let us know.
And Sammy, remember when we thought we weren't going to fill the time?
Yeah. I do.
All right. Well, thank you very much. That was an excellent presentation. We do have a couple of questions that have come through. So the first one is, I work with some students just learning to use a communication device. Would the predictable chart writing still be good for any first selection they make, intentional or not?
So what we will do for some of those early communicators, like I said, we have some students in that conventional level where we can say, all right, here is the phrase for the week. This week it was I ride, and they were typing out like Honda Civic and just like, unique things that they wanted to ride in. And then for some students who maybe don't know where to access like that group, you can provide a separate visual page. Like Sammy said, we use symbol sticks, and so I'll do 12 grid options of just saying, oh, hey, like here's some things you could ride. What do you want to ride? And you're limiting their selection a little bit by giving those visual options, but they're still being exposed. And then you can model that and say, oh, I ride, you said a boat. Where do you think boat would be? And kind of do that like think aloud, model language input. So yeah, I definitely think it's a good step for offering some options, but still doing it in kind of a structured, controlled way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great. Okay, so the next question says, for the author's chair, are they reading a book they put together with the I want, I see model with different words each week? Is that what you're using?
Yes. So sometimes we'll do like that day 5 of, you just wrote this book with our chart. You get to read it. Other times we've had that free writing experience. And we said, oh, they wrote this awesome book about their favorite rappers. Is one student. He had like a whole concert picture series that he wrote all about, and he showed it, and he practiced turning the pages of a book and showing it, and then we would hold it up and he would write on his device, this is what I wrote about. So it can really be whatever you would like to kind of share off that reading or that speaking skill. If they like a page of the book a lot, they could read one of their favorite pages and say, oh, this is the one I liked. So it could really be up to you.
I like that. Get the buy-in from the student by doing something that they're really, that they're interested in and motivated by. So that's great. Okay, we got a lot of great comments. Really great workshop. Your students are very lucky to have you all. And loads of good information. Thanks, Connor and Sammy.
Thank you, guys.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to thank Sammy and Connor again for being our final guest webinar for the Indiana AAC Summit 2020.
That's a wrap,
Yeah, I want to thank all our great presenters. We had some great presenters this time, and it was a learning experience for all of us, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm hoping that next year we'll be able to get together in person. I really hope that we'll be back to in-person events again, because I sure do miss seeing everybody and, just kind of the collaboration that comes with all of us being in the room together, the buzz that you kind of get because everybody's so excited and learning new things. So, yep, hopefully we'll see many of you, if not all of you, at the summit next year. So thanks for coming.
Yep. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye.